breeze as it whispered through the pines, beheld the midnight stars as they blazed away the night. But there are no words that can tell of your love. There are no words that can speak of your works.
Thanks for coming back to the podcast. Today's special guest is NASA astronaut Kjell Lindgren. Kjell, good to have you on.
Hey, thank you, Richard. Excited to be joining you on the podcast.
Very good. So we were talking a little bit before about the interview, and some people that they both know you and myself, and just conversation said that you'd be a good person to have on and talk a little bit about their faith and science as it relates to your missions and your jobs at NASA, but also talk a little bit about faith and how it means what it means to you in your personal life. So let's talk about that. Let's get it set up a little bit, talk a little bit about your involvement with NASA, and then we'll go into a little bit of the convergence of faith and science.
Well, I joined NASA back in 2007. My background, I'm a physician. I trained in emergency medicine up in Minneapolis after finishing medical school in Colorado, but had the desire to participate in human spaceflight in some way. And so after finishing emergency medicine, I had the great fortune of being accepted into the aerospace medicine program down at UTMB in Galveston and trained in aerospace medicine. And then upon kind of finishing up that program, was hired as a flight surgeon here at Johnson Space Center. And so in the 2 years that I served as a flight surgeon, essentially caring for crew, sitting in mission control, about 6 months of that 2 years I actually spent in Russia and Star City supporting the crew members that we had out there training for their space station missions. I was selected into the astronaut office in 2009 after applying and responding to the call for applications, and immediately began astronaut candidate training. That lasted about 2 years. Was assigned to a mission in 2013, which I flew in 2015, spending 141 days on the International Space Station, right in the middle of Scott Kelly's one-year mission. And
Okay.
I got to do 2 spacewalks, amazing opportunity. And then more recently got to fly on a SpaceX Crew Dragon as the commander of Crew 4, and then spent 141 days on the space station. 170 days on the space station as a part of Expedition 67, just returning home in mid-October last year. So
Right.
absolutely just amazing experiences, but also very grateful to be back home with my family.
I'm sure. Yeah. So talk a little bit about your faith. You're a man of God. Can you give us some highlights on that? Was it something you were born into? Did you find it later in life? Discuss that a little bit.
Sure. Well, I was born into a family where faith was important. I grew up in kind of as an Air Force brat, so living born in Taiwan, living in Texas in the Midwest, but really spent the majority of my childhood overseas. So from 3rd grade to 9th grade, living in England, and then finishing high school out in Virginia. And so growing up was really just kind of in the Protestant, the Department of Defense. It provides we have chapels on base, and so kind of grew up in the Protestant denomination. My family's background is Lutheran, and so I went through a confirmation class as a part of that. But then, really, I think it was my time at the Air Force Academy. Again, just kind of a Protestant denomination available there on the academy. And it was really after graduating and after I started dating my wife that I started going to church with her, to a church in Colorado Springs, and then ultimately found a church up in Fort Collins when I was doing my graduate work that I really kind of was intrigued by the Bible as kind of a foundational, like primary evidence document. And so the churches that I found really, the sermons, the messages, the teachings, all really focused on the Bible, and that really appealed to me. Having come up through college in the sciences and looking for that kind of primary documentation, the fact that a lot of the messages and teaching were really focused on the Bible really appealed to me.
Okay. And in your current involvement, are you heavily active in a particular church?
Yeah, so when we moved from Minneapolis to Houston, we were looking for a home church, and we had young kids at the time, and so we actually found Bay Area Church here in Lake City, and they have a school, they had a preschool, and that's where our daughter ended up, and then it just felt like a very natural extension to start going to church there, and that has been our church home for the past many years. We've
Okay.
16, 17 years now, and just love that community. Love the leadership there, and for me, it's been an opportunity also to serve there in the church. I serve as an elder in
Okay.
at Bay Area Church.
Okay. I remember when I first got my start in journalism, I was covering high school sports, and one of my first beats was the whole Clear Lake area, the Bay Area
Okay.
Citizen newspaper, and I would cover Bay Area Christian Church, and Darwin Penny was the head coach, I think athletic director at the time. I don't know if
Okay.
he's still there or not, but yeah. So yeah, I have a little
Oh,
tie in there, and it's a beautiful campus,
that's
and
awesome.
it's yeah, it seems like it's growing.
It is absolutely. Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So faith and science. So I look at the landscape behind you, that picture behind you, and I think that's you've seen that being aboard the ISS and different aspects of the Earth. What does that do to you as a man of faith when you see God's creation off in the distance?
Absolutely. I think taking a step back, that the the beliefs that astronauts and those who have the opportunity to fly carry with them tend to be emphasized or underscored by that experience. And so for me, uh, getting to see the Earth from that perspective, to see creation from that perspective, just really amplified um, my connection with the Earth, with the people, and the story of creation. And the Earth is amazing. I mean, it is truly indescribable. You can see the photo behind me, but just to see that the blues and the greens, the whites and browns of the Earth, just set against the empty void of space, and to recognize that that is where um, everybody that has ever lived, and who, the entirety of humanity is back on the Earth. And so for me, I just felt very connected with the Earth and recognized it as just um, an amazing place, our home, uh, and that it was created for us. The other thing that it really underscored to me is that its fragility. And so you'll often hear astronauts talk about looking at the horizon and seeing just the thin atmosphere. And you can kind of see it in the picture behind me, just that
Hmm.
thin blue line of
Right.
atmosphere and how fragile that appears. And we can see the effects that humanity has on the earth, agriculture, and all of those things, which are critically important to take care of our people. But I think the view that we have, it immediately resonates with us that we have to be better stewards of this incredible thing um, that was created for us. So for me, it was having the opportunity to be in orbit and realizing this lifelong dream of getting to fly in space. Incredibly grateful for that opportunity, and grateful to have the perspective um, of the Earth from that vantage point. And I think
Hmm.
that really drives home so many lessons.
That's true. And you talk about the fragility of the earth. We take that for granted being here on earth, but that perspective that you and really just a proverbial handful of people have ever experienced, I'm sure it maybe the first time you went up there maybe changed some perceptions you may have had until you get up there and you look down and did any of your perceptions or maybe opinions change from maybe the time that you were working on earth to the time you actually were up at the ISS looking back down?
Oh, absolutely. I think that, like you said, when you're on the Earth, the the resources, the consumables all feel limitless and infinite. You don't sense any limitation on the air that you have to breathe, the food that we have to eat, um, the water available to us, and a huge part of that is just the privilege of living here in the United States and the accessibility that we have to food and water and all those things. Um, but being on the space station, looking back at the Earth, it is, we can see the Earth as a finite object, and there's space, all around it. And I think the thing that really resonated with me is the fact that we spend so much time on the space station, um, recognizing that we are living in a hazardous environment, and that we spend upwards of 30% of our time taking care of the space station, because if we don't and it breaks, our lives are immediately at risk. This
Right.
vehicle that provides us with water and food and a breathable atmosphere and protection from radiation and micrometeorites. Um, and then you look back at the Earth and have this just kind of profound realization that Earth is humanity's spaceship, and that we, I think, on an individual basis, don't spend anywhere near 30% of our time on a daily basis taking care of the Earth and taking care of this incredible gift that it was created for us. And so I think when I returned home, that realization really stuck with me.
Hmm. You make it easy to write this story. That's going to be a good tagline. Earth is humanity's spaceship. You're making
Yeah.
the story easy. Very good. So I know when I interviewed Victor Glover several months back about his experiences and him being a man of faith as well, he was talking about things that he takes up with him, that he's taken up with him to the ISS, and will probably will again when he goes in a year or two. Are the things that you take up there that help you keep your faith strong as I know you're working up there, but I know you do have some downtime as well. Things that you take up there to kind
Sure.
of keep you reflecting on that?
Absolutely. I the items that we bring, and we're very fortunate to be able to bring items with us that
Right.
connect us with home, connect us with our families. I know a lot of us bring pictures of our family, little tokens of things that are important to us. And so, of course, among the things that I brought up with me was a Bible. In fact, during my first mission, I brought a Bible up for each of my kids so that I could, just inscribe a note to them and return it to them upon my return. And so I borrowed one of my son's Bible when I was up there last time, and this time I brought one up for myself. Of course, we've got on our electronic equipment, we've got access um, to books and those sorts of things as well. But just having that tactile connection to God's word was important to me. But more important than that, I mean, I think it was important to have that for just daily devotional time and meditation. But I just had a great accountability partner. So one of my good friends from the Air Force Academy, actually a friend of mine on the parachute team while I was there, is just an incredible leader and mentor and man of God. And he had just kind of committed before my first flight, that to kind of having a shared daily devotional. And so on a daily basis, every day, he sent me an email with a devotional and just kind of how it applied to his life at that time, connected with pictures of things that he was doing with his kids and family. And the discipline of doing that every day with me on my first mission, then he did it again on the second mission, was just absolutely amazing, and really kind of the foundation of my meditative and prayer life during the mission. And so, that was critically important kind of on a daily basis. But then the opportunity, to just have quiet time, it's so important to have quiet time on a daily basis. But
Right.
on the space station, that I can just float into the cupola and float there quietly and just look back at the Earth is just such an amazing privilege.
Okay. Do you mind mentioning that person's name, or would you rather not?
Oh yeah, that's Scott Taylor. So a good friend of mine from the parachute team, now lives up in Indianapolis,
Okay.
but just an incredible partner,
Okay.
prayer partner during my mission, both of my missions.
Very good. So in the short time we have remaining, got just a couple of quick questions for you, and we'll finish
Sure.
up. Favorite Bible verse, and one that maybe not just maybe favorite, but one that ties into one that connects the two sides of you, the man of faith and the man of science.
Yeah, so Psalm 121 was incredibly important to me. You know, I think that you also recognize that we are in a hazardous environment, and there's a lot of expectations, and just understanding that as we go through the procedures of all the dynamic phases of flight, the preparations, the travel that's involved there, launch and landings, the spacewalks, just recognizing that we are just under God's umbrella, under His protection, and that He has a plan for our lives, and that even during that mission, there are ways that are going to um, things that are going to be amplified and resonate for His kingdom was just very powerful. And so Psalm 121 for me, something that my wife kind of would send me in emails before a spacewalk. I actually had a printout of it in my cuff checklist when I went out on my EVA on my spacewalk, and just as a reminder of God's sovereignty over our daily lives.
Okay. And then I guess finally, if you could maybe relate an anecdote or a short story about how faith maybe helped you get through a tough time, whether it's an astronaut or maybe personal life or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my path into the astronaut office was definitely not a straight line. I graduated from the Air Force Academy and went to pilot training, and all through that time, a decade of work with the goal of becoming an Air Force pilot and then maybe someday an astronaut. And um, following a plan that I had created for myself, uh, but in pilot training, kind of running into a brick wall where I had was diagnosed with a medical issue with asthma that I didn't think was a problem. Didn't really have a concern for continuing to fly. But after 6 months of a diagnostic process and waiting and bureaucracy and all those things, ultimately was not allowed. Not only was not allowed to continue in pilot training, but ultimately was discharged from the Air Force.
Mm.
And so that was the obliteration of a dream, the obliteration of a path that I had been working on for over a decade, and in a very challenging time, and one of the most difficult occurrences in my professional career. Um, and so I would say leaning on friends and family, and ultimately faith, and trying to recognize like what is God's plan for my life in this situation. And just kind of based on work that I'd done previously in preparation, I was able to apply to medical school and ultimately pursue a career in medicine. And for me, that represented a challenge and also a way to serve the community, and it was a good fit. And that path ultimately led to emergency medicine, ultimately aerospace medicine, and then lo and behold, an opportunity to apply to the astronaut office and join the astronaut corps. Of course, in there, while I was in emergency medicine, because of some of the nature of some of the work that we did, I had to get tested for asthma and was ultimately cleared of that diagnosis, and tested several more times and cleared. And so that really opened up the door to have this opportunity to apply and now get to live and work as an astronaut. And so for that first flight, launching, arriving on orbit, of course, was the realization of a lifelong dream, something that I had been working towards for a long time. But more importantly for me, I think the greatest gift out of that event of arriving on orbit was really the opportunity to look back at my life and see that day where I was being kicked out of the Air Force, a day that I would describe as one of the darkest days of my life, almost a curse, and to recognize it as a blessing.
Hmm.
So something that I thought was one of my worst days, turning out in retrospect to be one of my best days, because I can tell you with almost 100% certainty that if I had not been kicked out of the Air Force, I would not be here today. I would not have this opportunity. And so seeing how God, works in amazing ways, and so grateful for that, to be able to look back and to have that perspective and to understand that when we have challenging days, that God is glorified in some way in those trials and in that tribulation. And so just getting to experience and see that in my own life, and trying to be an encouragement to others that are experiencing that. So I think faith played a large role in the event at the time, but having the privilege of getting to look back on a day like that, a day that my whole path pivoted in a direction that ultimately, I've gotten to serve and have the privilege of serving in this job as an astronaut. Just really grateful for all of that, but most of all for the perspective that I've gotten now looking back.
Very good. Well, that's an amazing story of faith and perseverance. And it's so easy to give up sometimes when it doesn't look like things make any sense. But that's very good. Kjell, I appreciate you taking the time to come on and tell us about your stories, both your story of faith and your story of becoming an astronaut. It's very inspiring. I wish you all the best. God bless. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you for the opportunity, Richard. Great chatting with you.